Welcome back to Vibe Podcast. Today we're discussing the Doorstep Murder Revisited, a topic researched for us by David Morgan. I'm joined by Charles and Angela.
Good evening, Alice. Charles here, ready to delve into the intricate details of what sounds like a particularly perplexing case. My background as an English policeman and my criminology studies always lead me to the cold, hard facts, even when they seem to vanish into thin air.
And I'm Angela, your resident detective for all things covert and conspiratorial. A doorstep murder, eh? Sounds like something out of a spy thriller already. I'm just waiting for the secret codes and the shadowy figures in trench coats.
Right then, let's jump straight in. We're talking about Alistair Wilson, a 30-year-old Bank of Scotland manager, who was shot dead on his doorstep in Nairn, Scotland, back on November 28, 2004. This case has remained unsolved for nearly 20 years, making it one of Britain's longest-running cold cases. Charles, from a policing perspective, what immediately jumps out to you about a case that remains unsolved for 2 decades?
Well, Alice, the sheer duration is, regrettably, not unique for particularly complex cases. But the fact it involves a seemingly ordinary citizen, a bank manager, rather than someone involved in organized crime, immediately raises a red flag. It suggests either an incredibly professional perpetrator or an exceptionally obscure motive, which can be the hardest thing to unearth.
Or, perhaps, a motive that someone very powerful wanted to keep obscure. Bank manager, you say? Banking, money. Definitely a prime candidate for some kind of corporate espionage or a hidden financial scandal, wouldn't you say? It's never just a simple, wrong place, wrong time, with these things.
Let's set the scene further. The Wilson family lived on Crescent Road in Nairn, a quiet seaside town. On that evening, Alistair was upstairs reading to his 2 young sons when a stranger knocked on the door around 7 p.m., asking specifically for Alistair by name. Veronica Wilson, his wife, answered and called him downstairs. And this is where it gets really strange. Charles?
Indeed, Alice. The stranger then handed Alistair an empty blue envelope with Paul written on it. Alistair, understandably confused, went back inside, then returned to question the stranger. It was then he was shot 3 times in what's been described as a gangland-style execution. This detail about the envelope is truly baffling for an investigator.
Baffling for them, perhaps. Paul, written on an empty envelope? That's a classic dead drop signal or a coded message, or even a deliberate misdirection to throw off suspicion. It screams spy novel to me. He went back to question him, perhaps he realized the message was important, or that the name, Paul, meant something he should know. This isn't just random, Alice. Someone was sending a very specific message.
You think it was a message, Angela? Charles, what's your take on the Paul envelope?
From a procedural standpoint, the envelope is one of the most frustrating pieces of the puzzle precisely because it makes so little sense on the surface. If it was a hit, why the theatrical gesture? If it was a message, why was it empty? And crucially, it was never recovered. This absence of a key piece of evidence strongly suggests it was either taken by the perpetrator or deliberately disposed of to prevent further analysis. Angela's point about misdirection isn't entirely without merit, but usually, misdirection serves a clearer purpose than an empty envelope.
Let's talk about the murder weapon. It was a 1930s .25 caliber Heinel pocket pistol from the Czech Republic, described as an extremely small weapon. It was found 9 days later in a drain half a mile from the Wilson home by council workers, but crucially, no DNA evidence was recovered from it.
The weapon's size and age are significant. A small caliber often indicates a close-range attack, and the age suggests it might have been an unregistered, untraceable firearm. The fact it was recovered, yet yielded no DNA, points to a perpetrator who was either meticulous or very lucky. Disposing of it in a drain, a common tactic to let water wash away forensic traces, suggests a degree of planning.
Meticulous, planning, untraceable firearm. See, Alice? This isn't a random act of violence. This is professional. No DNA? Of course not. They wore gloves, or they wiped it clean. And leaving it in a drain half a mile away? That's exactly what a trained operative would do to distance themselves from the immediate crime scene and confuse tracking. This isn't a bungled amateur job.
And the suspect description was quite general. Male, originally 30 to 40, later revised to 20 to 40, short and stocky, around 5 feet 4, possibly taller, short dark hair, wearing a black baseball cap, dark jeans, and a black bomber jacket. Angela, a bit generic for a spy, wouldn't you say?
But that's the point, isn't it? Generic is the perfect disguise. It's the gray man approach. Nobody remembers the generic guy. It's designed to make him fade into the background. And the age revision? Typical police re-evaluation when their initial assumptions don't quite fit the emerging profile. They're probably trying to make the facts fit someone they've found.
While the description is broad, it's often the best police have in the immediate aftermath of a traumatic event, and eyewitness accounts can be notoriously unreliable under stress. The revision of the age range is a common adjustment as more information comes to light, or as new persons of interest are identified. It's about refining the search, not necessarily manipulating information.
Let's move to major theories. In 2022, police revealed their primary theory, a planning dispute. Alistair had objected in writing to noise from the Havelock Hotel across from his home, just 2 days before his murder. Police believe someone connected to the pub may have been involved. Charles, does a planning dispute, a noise complaint, really warrant a gangland-style execution?
Alice, on the surface, it seems disproportionate, doesn't it? A noise complaint escalating to murder is extreme. However, human emotions can run incredibly high in property disputes, and sometimes seemingly minor grievances can be the catalyst for immense rage. While the execution style points to professionalism, it's not impossible that someone hired a professional, or someone with military training perhaps, to deal with the problem in an extreme fashion. It's a plausible theory in its base, but the methodology remains puzzling.
A noise complaint? Please, that's what they want us to believe. It's a convenient, mundane explanation to sweep the real, far more interesting, and likely much darker motive under the rug. Oh, it was just a grumpy neighbor who got a hitman because of decking. It's a cover story, plain and simple. What was really going on with that hotel? Who was frequenting it? What else was being discussed besides noise?
Andy Burnett, the former owner of the Havelock Hotel, an ex-army man who worked as a diplomatic courier in Germany, was first on the scene to help after the shooting. He moved to Canada in 2013 and was interviewed by police in Nova Scotia. He's officially a witness, not a suspect.
Burnett's military background and role as a diplomatic courier are details that stand out, as they suggest a man with a certain skill set and potentially connections. Being first on the scene could be genuinely helpful neighborliness, or, in some cases, it can be a way to establish an alibi or observe the initial police response. The police would have undoubtedly explored every angle with him, given his unique background and proximity to the alleged motive.
Ex-army, diplomatic courier in Germany? Alice, that's practically ACV for a black ops agent. And he's officially a witness, not a suspect. That's exactly what they say when they can't pin anything on them, or when they're protecting someone. He's got the perfect cover story, the perfect background for this kind of operation.
Police have also focused on a person of interest. A man who lived in Nairn at the time, worked for emergency services, was 20 years old at the time of the murder, was a regular at the Havelock pub, kept licensed firearms, and was linked to Andy Burnett on social media. However, acquaintances described him as a decent guy and not stocky.
This person of interest fits some parameters, particularly the revised age and the licensed firearms. The emergency services background might also suggest a certain composure under pressure. However, the discrepancies in physical description, not stocky, versus the original, stocky, are significant. Acquaintances often describe individuals positively, but it doesn't preclude involvement. Police pursuing this line would be looking for concrete connections beyond social media.
A decent guy, with licensed firearms, linked to an ex-army, diplomatic courier, who's not stocky, when the killer was. Sounds like a classic misdirection to me. They want us to focus on the young, local guy. Perhaps he was coerced, or he's being framed. Or perhaps he's just a convenient distraction. The not stocky part is particularly telling. They're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, or they've got the wrong peg.
Let's look at recent developments. In September 2024, Scotland's Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain KC ordered a complete re-investigation, with a new team of prosecutors and police officers assigned. What are your thoughts on a re-investigation after 20 years, Charles?
A fresh pair of eyes and a dedicated new team can sometimes unearth details or connections that were previously overlooked, especially with advancements in forensic technology over 2 decades. It offers a glimmer of hope for the family. However, the passage of time also means witnesses' memories fade, and other evidence can degrade or disappear.